My name is Carol Stewart. I live in Marion. I just celebrated 16 years clean on the 28th, so just the other day. I have been afforded the opportunity to be a daughter for the last few years of my mother's life. I have 8 grandkids, so I am a grandmother. I have 3 kids. 2 of them are addicts. One is in recovery. The other one, unfortunately, is incarcerated. But that's okay. He's learning a lesson. And I am in long-term recovery.
Well, thanks so much for coming out and joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time. Can you start off by sharing a bit about your childhood?
So I grew up in incest, actually, and I came from a long line of addicts and alcoholics. I don't ever use that for an excuse as to how I live now or what I'm doing now in my life. But my father was a pedophile and was in foster care for a little while. My mom, who was alcoholic and a prescription drug user, in and out of a couple psych wards. That's kind of where it's, where it's at.
Can you share a bit about when you first started experimenting with alcohol and drugs?
Oh, I was 9 years old when my dad gave me my first beer. And it kind of grew from there, but 3 DUIs later, I still didn't have a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But I was in and out of jail on, paraphernalia charges and disorderly conducts, and I didn't really discover my DOC. I started dabbling with cocaine when I was about 18.
Mm-hmm.
I already had a child. I had custody of my younger sister. I was out of my house by 16. I was married at 17. So I really didn't find my DOC until I was later in life, about 39 years old, and I discovered crack cocaine. And that's when things really fell apart. So I was kind of functioning up until that point.
Mm-hmm. Able to maintain employment.
Mm-hmm, yes, a home, my kids, my sister. But after that, it fell apart. I lost everything more than once.
Gotcha. So could you kind of paint a picture of what life was like in the throes of active addiction?
Well, there was very little sleep. I could never trust anybody. My home was a crack house. We opened it up to the dealers. We threw parties for the dope dealers to get drugs. My husband at the time, it was a volatile relationship. We fought pretty hard. I don't even know what else to say about that. Obviously, I lost my daughter. She was my youngest, and I lost her in jail. She went to her dad's. When I would get her on the weekends, at some point I decided I could be a weekend warrior and just do drugs on the weekends. Again, this is one of the times I lost everything again. And so she would go to meetings with me and stuff, and she saw that I was clean. She never saw me high. She saw me drink, but she never saw me actually do drugs. My son, on the other hand, there was a lot of guilt and shame I used with my son. And the day I watched him try to trade or sell his shoes on his feet for crack was the day. That was when I knew something had to give. Like, I broke down. It was terrible, and I said, I can't do this anymore.
So when you came to that realization, what did you do?
I went to jail.
Okay.
I had no idea where to go, what to do. So I went out and committed a crime, and I went to jail. And I told him that I need help. I don't
Right.
know what to do.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I ended up spending four months in county, with 18 months in prison over my head. And I was very lucky. Uh, at that point, when they finally indicted me on my charge, because I am a felon, um, I had a year clean. And I had a big NA support group, and they were all with me in that courtroom, you know. And that was, I get goosebumps to this day thinking about the unity that gives. So I was very lucky.
Absolutely. So definitely there's some luck, but also there's some work involved in being able to create those relationships. So if you could think back to that first year, what are some of the things that you did that really helped you with building that support and getting to a place that you could start to trust others and others could start to trust you?
The first year, it was good, and I got a sponsor, and she tried to get me to work the steps several times, and that was hard. Eventually, I got to start working the steps, and once I started working the steps, it was easy. Again, it was really hard to get it started, but I got it started, and it was good, and I got through some steps, and I was about 16 months in, and I found myself curled up in a corner, and I wanted to fall off the face of the earth. And everybody said, "Oh, just go to the local mental health center, and they'll get you hooked up." And so I did, and they diagnosed me manic depressive bipolar. And they started me on a regimen of drugs, and they guinea pigged me for about 3 years, because they didn't have gene site testing back then.
Mm-hmm.
And so once they finally got my medication regulated, and I'm probably jumping ahead.
Nope, you're doing well.
So when they finally got my medication regulated, I did that for about 2 years, and at this point, I probably had about 6 years clean.
Mm-hmm.
And I studied a lot of rational emotive behavior therapy and a lot of cognitive behavior therapy. So I always tried to stay very aware of what was going on in my surroundings, what was going on in my world, because the only thing I have control over is what I do, how I react, and where I put myself, what position I'm in. And so I stayed very aware of that. And about 6 months in, I decided I didn't want to be on those medications anymore. And fortunately for me, and I never recommend this to anybody, I stopped taking them cold turkey, but I was okay. And I haven't been on anything since.
So you had mentioned that in active addiction of, I think, losing custody of your daughter, if you could talk about how your relationships with your family changed and what you did to be able to rebuild those relationships.
So my mother was my rock. She, that was, besides my son, one of the guiltiest things. I was ashamed of the way that I treated my mother and my kids, my whole family, but my mother was my rock, and she was always there for me. And she knew when she got the call that said, this is a loved one from county jail, whatever, she always took the call. On a fixed income, she always took the call. She always made sure I had $20 on my account. And so doing what I did to her, getting out, getting clean, and being able to take those last 3 years of her life. She was diagnosed with lung cancer, and it was very aggressive. Being able to take the last 3 years of her life, she died in 2009, and spend that, I don't care what anybody says, I was always my mommy's favorite. But if you ask my little sister, she'll tell you the same thing. But being able to take those last 3 years to spend with my mom, I was there when she died. She was very proud of me, and it was hard for her to say that just because of the generation that she grew up in. And I don't ever blame my mother for the things that happened to me in my life because she did the best that she could with what she had. I made amends with my father before he passed. Um,
How about with your daughter?
my daughter and I, again, more guilt. My daughter ended up being addicted very early. She was a young mother as well. She had her first baby when she was 16, and that's my oldest grandson. And just because of the nature of the drugs today, hers, was opioid addiction, and so it took her out pretty quick. And she walked in one day, and her son was 6 months old, 9 months old, and she said, "I don't want to be a mom anymore." And she sat there, and I just looked at her, and he said, "What are you talking about?" And she got up and walked out of my house. And I ended up with custody of him at 2.5 through her whole addiction. She was in and out. I never told her she couldn't see her son. It was Children's Services goal to maintain their relationship. She ended up getting pregnant again. And when AJ was born, he was about a month old, and Braylon ended up somehow falling down the stairs. And at that point, he almost died. That part of her addiction, my recovery, was the hardest part ever.
Yeah.
Even going through what I went through with my mom. And so we obviously had a fight with Children's Services. It was not very nice. So I fought very hard to get my grandson back. And my daughter, that was, everybody's bottom is different, but not even that was my daughter's bottom. She continued to use for a little bit longer. It took her getting her jaw broke and getting her jaw wired shut by a dope boy to realize she didn't want to do this anymore.
Gotcha. So, what dreams have come true for you, and what hopes do you have for the future?
So, dreams that have come true, and first of all, to see my daughter where she is today in her life. It's just amazing. It does make me cry because she is doing so well, and she has a beautiful family, and she's a good mother. To see some of the things that she's now going through, still suffering through, but to see that life change in her, that's always, one thing that I have dreamed about. And I see that for my son too. Hopefully this will be it for him. Being able to work with recovering addicts the way that I do, it's amazing. The one thing that I learned in the 12-step program is you can only keep what you have by giving it away. And if I can get paid for doing it, bonus. you know?
Yes.
And so that has always been a dream for me. Grandiose dreams. I want to hit the lottery. But who doesn't, right?
Right.
Just to see my family grow, to see what's coming for Marion County, Delaware County. Like, I work in Morrow County, and just to see how all the facilities that are opening up for recovery and all the money that the government is putting in, and the grants for the drug courts, there is no reason why, if somebody does not really want to get clean, why they can't. And my dream is that everybody gets it. My dream is that they really want it, because if you really want it and you chase it like you did your dope, then you'll get it.
Right.
And if I can do it, if someone would have told me 16 years ago I'd be doing what I'm doing today, I would have laughed. No way.
Right. So, what are some intangible and tangible gifts that you've received in recovery?
So I guess some intangible gifts would be, you know, um, the again, from example, in me watching other people in recovery, the empathy, the ability to learn to hold my tongue, because sometimes there's no filter there, and that's one of the things. By example, I'm learning. I'm a work in progress. Like it's progress, not perfection, right?
Yep.
Um, some so when it comes to intangible, it's just like the things you don't see.
Right.
And so when I'm out there and I say I'm a recovering addict, like that's 24/7, 7 days a week, not for an hour at the meeting,
Right.
or not when I'm counseling somebody for an hour. I'm in the public, I'm in the community, and they see how I react and how I behave. And I try to stay as real as possible. I don't try to sugarcoat anything, because it's life or death. And so some people call me a little bit hardcore, but there wasn't the resources when I got clean as there is now. So it was a little harder. But some of the tangible things that I have gotten are mainly from my kids, and that's my beautiful grandchildren. My grandson Cade, who is the youngest, does not know anything about my daughter's life of addiction, her recovery. He was never privy to that kind of a life, and watching people recover.
Yeah.
You might think it's not tangible, but when I get that text from somebody that I helped a year ago that says thank you, that's tangible.
Absolutely. That's about as tangible as you can get, as people getting well.
Yes.
So,
yes.
and I have to say that blessing of being able to hold your tongue, and people who are passionate, that can be a struggle.
But people mistake that passion for hate and anger. No, I'm very passionate.
Right.
And if it's something that I believe in and I know is right, I'm going to continue to be passionate.
For sure. And we need more people to speak up. And also that honesty part. There, as you had mentioned, you can almost love somebody to death through enabling and being afraid of hurting somebody's feelings and whatnot. Being honest is sometimes the best gift that you can give somebody.
Absolutely.
And that's really cool that you're able to practice that in the work that you do with so many different people. So you've alluded to this a little bit of how things have changed over the past 16 years from when you were trying to get sober to now. What are some, just from on a professional level, what do you see as we still need to do more of?
So for me, what I see is, and I'm going to touch on the mental health part of it, because people that are new in recovery, they do have all these feelings and emotions, and they want to be validated, and there's instant gratification, and they don't know how to deal with all that. And the only thing they know, the only thing an addict knows to do is use. So we are trying to learn how to do one of the most abnormal things there is, and that's not use. And so we learn our what are all these emotions and feelings, like what do you do with this, right? And so I feel like if we had real mental health providers that is going to work with somebody through their issues instead of writing a script every time they turn around, people would be a lot better off. Do I feel like there's people out there that need mental health medication on a regular basis? Absolutely. Do I think there are recovering addicts out there that just need it to help build their foundation? Absolutely.
Yes.
I don't, sometimes people look at me and say, you need to go get medicated. And I'm like, that's going to be a hard no. But then I stop and look and go, okay, I need to go back and do some of that cognitive behavior therapy, changing that thought process, because if other people are seeing it, then I need to go back to that a little bit more. And that helps keep me stable in that area. But I feel like if there are mental health professionals out there working with people on their PTSD and their trauma to help them get through it instead of medicating it, they're going to be a lot better off down the road.
What did you learn from your addiction?
Not to do drugs. I learned that it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from or what kind of background you have. It does not discriminate. It will affect everybody, anybody that you're around. One of the most important things I learned is that you can't let, whatever your background is, you can't play the victim. I'll put it that way. I don't dwell on what happened in my childhood. I know that they did the best they could with what they had. I learned that my dad was sick, you can't use it as an excuse. You have to make the decision to live your life a certain way, and if you want to live, some people like to live that life. I chose not to, and I don't use it as an excuse, and I won't be the victim.
Absolutely. It reminds me of a saying, how free do you want to be?
Yeah.
That's
I hear my daughter and my grandkids out there. Oh my God.
So, last question. What hope could you share with someone who is struggling to get sober? Some words of wisdom that have spoken to you over the years.
For me, I think it's very vital for, first of all, let go, let God. Build your outside support. You gotta have that outside support. Wherever it is you're going, whether it's a 12-step program or your church or whatever, you need that outside support. You gotta want it.
Absolutely.
You gotta want it.
For sure.
Taste it like you did your dope.
Well said. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule and your very full life to be able to share your experience. Your story is definitely going to help somebody who's out there who's struggling and looking for a way. You've clearly showed that recovery is possible.
It absolutely is. And right now, today in the position that I'm in, I get to work with. I've worked in the Marion County Drug Courts. I've worked in the Delaware County Drug Courts, and now in the Morrow County Drug Courts, and that's where I gotta be today.
Very cool.
Gotta go to drug court.
Well, very cool.
And working with those people, it's amazing.
That's awesome. Well, thank you again so much.